two people on $100,000 a year each, $200,000 a year, you're pretty much just getting by in a major city. The fact that you have a salary like that excludes you from any kind of government support. If you're out of the super cycle in your 30s, you're losing 10 years of compounding interest when you're at your earning peak. So there's a couple of issues here. It would be worthwhile having a conversation with the co-parent. Financial stress is all-consuming. It just really narrows our bandwidth. Bring in the advent of AI, and we've got a stat that says 69% of people in Australia at the moment don't actually know whether their job is still going to be their job in 18 months' time.
What does it take to be a financially empowered woman? And what can financially empowered women do together to change the world? A shocking statistic is that around 400,000 women in Australia are at risk of homelessness. And the cause of this is the lack of education about how to build a financial foundation, starting even before we first enter the workforce and well into our retirement years. My name's Yenom, and I'm the founder of the Financially Empowered Women podcast. I'm passionate about ending homelessness, and as part of that passion, I chose to look at the systemic barriers that are causing homelessness for women in the first place. The Financially Empowered Women podcast is designed to bring you the best experts from around the world to increase your financial know-how and give you practical and women-specific tips to overcome the challenges you might be facing, such as how to negotiate a better salary, demystifying super, or how to navigate a separation and ensure the assets are distributed fairly. My role is to provide you with the best information out there to change your trajectory and become a financially empowered woman, because you deserve it, and the world needs you more than ever to own your worth and help others to do the same.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Financially Empowered Women podcast. My name's Yenom and I'm your host for today. In the studio, I'm joined by Amanda Medici, and Amanda is the founder of Yenom. Let me tell you a little bit about Amanda. Amanda has a background in law, finance, and adult education. She calls herself a financial literacy nerd. She's passionate about the provision of financial literacy education to all in an effort to ensure they have the opportunity to thrive in their chosen lives, in whatever format that may be. Amanda founded Yenom to address the forgotten people who are the working poor, those who do not qualify for government assistance due to being employed, but still in huge need of assistance. Welcome, Amanda.
Hi, Dion. Thank you. We have a nice alignment here between what we do.
We really do. We really do. And it's so interesting. So as I was reading your bio and you described the working poor, it made me think of a statistic that I heard maybe about a year and a half ago, which was that people, households on six-figure salaries, only 13% of homes were affordable for them. So we're talking about people on $100,000 a year, and yet only 13% of homes are affordable. Crazy times.
And look, two people on $100,000 a year each, $200,000 a year, you're pretty much just getting by in a major city. When I started work, that would have been an amazingly great salary, but these days, no. And the fact that you have a salary like that excludes you from any kind of government support or government initiatives, government programs. So I've kind of figured, and I've worked out over the years, that the people who are disadvantaged, and I use the social services term for that, people who don't have an income, people who qualify for a Centrelink card because they have a very low income, people who are not able to join the workforce or retired. There is a myriad of services and support systems out there that is funded and supported by the government. And they're great. I've worked with a lot of them. I love them. They're fabulous. But the minute you no longer qualify for that Centrelink card, you're kind of on your own. But in a lot of cases, the needs haven't changed. Those people still need education. They still need support. They still need peer support. So I decided to just fill that gap.
Amazing. And so tell us a little bit about where you started. I mean, you mentioned that you've got a background in finance and law. And how did you get from where you started to here now?
Yes, that's a good question. So look, I started work in the 90s in Sydney, and I started work in the information technology or computing industry. And, you know, the heady last days of 80s excess. It was a strange time in Sydney. Salaries and incomes were high. Spending was high. It was kind of the end of a boom period, and it was great. During that time, so I was studying law part-time at that point, but during that time, incomes were good, spending was high, everything was great. And I recognized reasonably quickly, like within the first, 5 years or so of my working life, that I am not good with money. This comes down to money personalities, right? So if I have money in my bank account, I will spend it. So in a lot of cases, I needed to protect myself from myself. Now, at that point as well, there was no financial literacy education around. Financial literacy wasn't a thing. If you hadn't learned how to budget from your parents, and I did learn how to budget from my parents, they were very, very good with money, then what hope did you have? It was also a slightly different time in that, I mean, we had ATM cards and credit cards and things like that, but we certainly didn't have all the electronic transactions that we have today. And I just remember talking to a friend who had downgraded a car, and she'd downgraded from a sports car into like a slightly less sports car. And I said, why did you do that? And she said, because I wasn't able to save when I had the other car. And I kind of looked at her and thought, people are saving. Like, right, I need to address this. And I mean, it didn't happen overnight. There was lots of trial and error there. And at the end of the day, I just realized very quickly that I needed to protect myself from myself, and that included putting boundaries in place. So I'm allowed to have a bank account with what I'm allowed to spend in it, and everything else is allocated and removed from my options. One of the best things that I ever did, and one of the things that has worked well for me, was to buy property. Because once I have a property, there's a mortgage on it. I've got to pay that mortgage. I always paid more than the mortgage was. And that, on top of the equity that developed over several years, was a really good way of me getting ahead. Times are very different now. But still, that kind of behavior, that understanding your money style, understanding who you are and your objectives, that was still very important at that time. So look, I worked like that for many years, and I worked overseas in a couple of different countries. And then when I decided to go out on my own, I decided it was time to get away from corporate. I reviewed what I would like to do, and there were a couple of criteria. I wanted to deal one-on-one with people, trying to help them do what they wanted to do. Mortgage broking appeared to me to be a really good way of doing that, because I'm dealing one-on-one with people, helping them with their dreams, buying their homes, building their portfolio, whatever that may be. It was also something that I could qualify in a very specific way. You're either qualified or you're not as a mortgage broker. You've either done the work or you're not. You're licensed or not. So it was a very clear way forward in terms of a path for me. But what happened when I got into mortgage broking was I saw how bad the financial literacy was and how tough things are for the working poor. That's kind of when I started to realize how things were. People would walk into the office and say that they wanted to buy a property, but they had no deposit, no savings history. And when I delved into it, they had a credit report that was absolutely annihilated, and they were not going to be approved for credit anywhere. But when I drilled down into that, there were issues behind that. Like, well, I'm excluded from the private rental market. I'm excluded from the public rental market. I'm going to be homeless unless I buy this house, and therefore I'm going to do this very dodgy rent to buy scheme. I mean, that's an extreme case, but that was the majority of people who walked into my office. So at that point, I realized that education was paramount, that just because you have a job and money doesn't mean you know what you're doing, and that there's an awful lot of people out there that need some independent education. And by that, I mean not from brokers. I'm not a broker anymore. I'm not licensed. I don't hold an AFSL. But they need independent education and information, not from somebody who is selling something or recommending something and earning a commission from that. So that's where I come in. So it's been a long ride. So from that point, I did a lot of financial literacy training. I've worked in that field for over 20 years now. I did my diploma in adult education so that I understood exactly how to get the message across in a way that it was understood. And here we are.
Amazing. So take me back to some of the people that, you know, you may have been teaching back in the day or that you're working with now. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing amongst this group of people, the working poor? And, you know, I say this group of people, there's more working poor than you might think, right?
The key thing with the working poor is firstly, where do they go for information? Because a whole lot of the information and education out there now is, as I said, sponsored by somebody who's trying to sell something or recommend something, and they're being paid for doing so. Yeah. In fact, the research says that Australians between the age of 18 and 55 have no credible source of independent information. On top of that, we have the rise of AI and bots, and, you know, the temptation to go and ask Claude or Gemini or somebody like that for information. I have a friend who's doing that religiously now, and she cringes every time she tells me about it. But, you know, she asks the AI chatbot and then she sends it through to me, and I'll kind of confirm what I think is okay and what isn't. The other thing that really concerns me is the rise of the finfluencer. So at this point with social media platforms, anybody who decides they've got a budget and they know what they're doing can get onto a platform, A, start selling the budget, and B, start telling other people what to do with their money. And that one particularly concerns me.
So, yes, we were talking about finfluencers and the damaging effect that they're having. What's the upshot of this? Like, what's the real risk that we're talking about here?
Misinformation and making the wrong choices. So it's very careful. It's very important that we get the right information out there. And I guess a little bit of discernment as well. So just because somebody's on TikTok or Instagram sprouting something that they've heard last week, I guess we need some discernment around that. And I know ASIC's Money Smart does a pretty good job in terms of education and getting information out there. So what Yenom would like to do as part of our work is we provide a certificate 2 in financial literacy education, which is RTO accredited training in how to be a financial literacy educator. We'd like that, along with a code of conduct or a code of ethics, to be provided to people who are actually legitimate financial literacy educators. So that's one way that we're attempting to address that.
Oh, very cool. And look, I think that would be really good because I can see why finfluencers and why social media is working. There's something about peer-to-peer information that, you know, somebody's talking about it on the TV and you feel that you've had a connection, then it kind of makes sense that, yeah, it kind of makes sense to me why people would be attracted to that. But like you said, the discernment piece is really important. So I'm glad that you're doing something around that. Yeah, absolutely. So we had a little bit of a conversation off camera around Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it's something that I've actually written about in terms of housing insecurity. But I'd love to hear your take on it from the financial well-being side.
Sure. Look, I think it is why I do what I do. So Maslow's hierarchy of need is the pyramid that says before a human being can thrive or pursue flights of passion or actually live in their highest kind of manifesting state of being, the basics of life must be secured. So you must have a roof over your head, some food on the table, some clothes to wear, some medical support. Like, they're the first 2 layers of the pyramid. If the first 2 layers of the pyramid are not sound and in place, then nothing above that can actually eventuate. You can't walk into somebody who's living in a tent in the park and say, hey, why aren't you manifesting your dreams? Hey, why aren't you out chasing a passion? Because I'm worried about where I'm going to sleep tonight, and I don't think I've had any food for 3 days. It's just it's a very kind of obvious, when you think about it, requirement for a positive and secure life. Now, so in order to secure food, clothing, shelter, the basics, unfortunately, in the world that we live in, we need money. That's how we pay for those things, and that's how we secure those things. So, my life's work is around making sure that people have the financial means to have that security in place. I often say to people, I'm going to get the basics sorted out, but once you leave me, I want to see all of those passions develop. I want to see you, painting or flying or creating a business or whatever it is that you want to do, because at that point you're in a position to do so. So it's very, very important that, we understand what it costs us to live, because people have different standards and different ideas of what that looks like. But a basic roof over your head. For some people, that's a van and they're traveling Australia in it. For other people, it's a 5-bedroom house. For other people, they're going to build a mud brick house. So whatever that looks like for you, let's just get a roof over your head. Then let's get some food on the table, and preferably nutritious food that's going to feed you and support you well. Let's get some utilities. Let's get you some healthcare. Let's get you some education. These are the basic requirements of life. So one of the first things I always say to people is we need to have an emergency fund in place here in order for you to feel secure, so that if your income stops tomorrow, if you break a leg, if your company goes broke, whatever it is, you have all of those basics covered for at least 6 months, and you can then deal with anything else that happens around that. So question number 1 is, what does it cost you to live every month? And you'd be surprised at the number of people who can't tell me. And they'll say, a couple of $1,000s. And I say, all right, well, let's drill down on that. Let's get into some expenses. And, it's actually $4,000 by the time we add everything in. So what we first need to understand is what it costs you to maintain those basics, to achieve or maintain those basics. Then we need to get that amount of money into some kind of emergency fund, whether it's your mortgage offset account or whether it's a different account. We need to have that under control. That says that no matter what happens to you, you're going to be okay. If you break a leg, you can take a month off and focus on healing. If you lose a really important person to you, grief can be so debilitating. You need to take 3 months off and just sit with that. Do it. You've got the money in the bank. You need some longer-term medical assistance. Do it. You want to take a sabbatical and study something different. Do it. This is the basic of basic. These are the basics of well-being in life. So I think it's just so important to have those under control.
If you've been watching the news lately, it's easy to feel a sense of despair. Between power-hungry global leaders and absolute chaos and division, it can feel like things are spiraling out of control. It's easy to feel overwhelmed and just to have a sense of powerlessness. But there is a way to push back. We can stop looking at what they are doing and start looking at what we can do. At Women for Homes, we firmly believe that where we put our money is making a choice for the kind of world that we want to live in. Our mission is powerful: to mobilise 1 million women to invest $5,000 to end homelessness by 2030, whilst being financially empowered along the way. It's practical, it's tangible, it's something that we can do now, and it's something that we can do to take our power back. Join us at www.womenforhomes.com. That's women4homes.com. And as you were talking, it reminded me of a conversation that I had this morning with somebody who, she's 40, she's early 40s, she's retired. She's still figuring out what she's going to do in this space, but her perspective is that she's financially independent. She can choose what she wants to do. She's actually traveling the world at the moment following BTS, which is a pop band, and she's having fun. I'm like, I want that life.
And I love hearing what people would do if they could do anything. I have another client too who wants to get a song into the Eurovision contest. And he said, I just want to take a year off and do it. I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. If that's what you want to do, do it. So it's very important to understand what it is you actually want out of life, and then just put a basic plan in place to do it. I love that, though. Touring the world. I have another friend, actually, who travels the world following Metallica.
Okay. Same thing. Yeah. That's awesome. And I found it interesting as well before when you were talking about money archetypes. Can you tell us a little bit about those? Like, how many archetypes are they? What are they?
Sure. There's about 12 money archetypes, and this is not an area that I'm a specialist in. I've read them. And archetypes are a Jungian kind of philosophy, and they can apply to different points in life. But some of the money archetypes, are you a saver? Are you a spender? Are you a risk taker? Are you risk adverse? Are you the security seeker? Are you the hippie? Peace, love among beings. Money doesn't matter. So it's just important to have a bit of an understanding around your own money personality. I've already said I will spend every cent that's in my bank account, right? So I'm a spender, and I'm a bit of a laissez-faire. The universe will provide. It'll come in again. So that's fine on one hand, but also a little bit reckless on the other. So I've just got to address that. The other thing about money personalities, I guess another way of looking at that is, how do you respond to money? Like, if I were to say the word budget, or when I say budget in a room full of people, half of them believe that it's positive and half of them believe that it's negative. And a lot of people associate a budget with a diet, with restrictions. Yeah. So it's interesting as to how we respond to these things too. And also, when you hear the word sale, what's your immediate thought? Do you need to rush in there and take a look at what's on sale? Or are you only interested if it's something that you were going to buy anyway? You know what I mean? So it's very important to kind of reflect on how we react to money.
Yeah. And, I think of that classic line, know thyself. So when you do know yourself, you can actually take steps to address whatever that archetype is. And it's really about looking at whether it's helping you or hindering you in some way.
Which is, it's funny you raise that, because that's exactly what Yenom is. When we hired the branding team to name the company, they asked me if I could communicate one thing to the people I'm working with, what would it be? And I woke up at 3:00 in the morning thinking, it's know thyself. Knowledge is power. Know thyself. And they came back with the concept of Yenom, which is a reflection of money, because it's money backwards. And it was very much Yenom, money, reflect. So that's kind of at the core of our philosophy.
Yeah, very cool. There was something that I learned. So when I started the Financially Empowered Women podcast, I started it because I realized that the group of women that were most at risk of homelessness were also the group of women that had quite a lot of stuff, were blindsided essentially by things in their lives that they hadn't expected. So things like divorce and separation, things like illness, as you mentioned before, and things like the superannuation gap, which, the gender pay gap, which leads into the lack of superannuation when it comes to later at life. And so the thought of the Financially Empowered Women podcast came to me. And to be honest with you, I didn't really want to do it because I was thinking, a podcast is going to be so much work. I'm glad I disregarded that. It is, but it's also fun. And the fun definitely outweighs the hard work. But the point for me was that I couldn't, having seen that gap, not provide the education. And so I really went out seeking women experts who could talk about these things from lots of different angles. So I'm really glad that our paths crossed and you're now on the podcast. One of the things I learned, though, was from a lady called Pascal Hellier-Murray. And it really stuck with me because she was sharing that she knew about pensions. I think she was working in the marketing department of a pensions company back in the day. And so she knew about the power of pensions, or superannuation as we call it over here. And so she started early. And even when she had a break to have children, she was still putting money into her superannuation. And I remember just hearing that and going, nobody told me that. Like, I remember all of the guilt that I felt when I was having children and having to rely on my husband. I just, was completely blindsided by that. So, what are some of the things that you think that new parents should know, or people that are thinking about becoming parents should know when it comes to protecting their financial security?
Yes, this is a big one, and particularly for younger women or people who are planning on becoming parents, there's a lot of things that need to be considered. Firstly, the person you are going to co-parent with, whether you're married or not, whatever your situation is, it'd be a good thing to understand that person's money style as well, and you can do that purely through observation, unless you want to give them a questionnaire, and I'm happy to send you a questionnaire if you'd like one. But simple observation would kind of give you an indication of what their money personality is going to be like. So the issue with this, superannuation is a compounding pattern, right? So it's compound interest, it's interest on interest, which means that the earlier you start, the more you have at the end of the day. And along with the pay gap, we have a bit of a super gap in that women are out of the workforce during that prime compounding time. So in their 30s, late 20s, 30s, And when you consider it, if you're out of the super cycle in your 30s, you're losing 10 years of compounding interest when you're at your earning peak right there. So there's a couple of issues here. One is the government now provides paid parental leave, and they do pay superannuation on that leave. So you do have some income coming in at that time. But it would be worthwhile having a conversation with the co-parent around making equal contributions to both superannuation funds during that time. And it doesn't have to be just for children either. If you are in a domestic agreement, a marriage, whatever it is, and one of you is going to take some time off work, consider the superannuation implications and consider making contributions to both funds. Because the other thing is that those contributions are tax deductible at the end of the day. So you do get an immediate benefit, but you certainly plan for that long-term outcome. The earlier you can start, the better. A lot of my friends now have kids around your lovely daughter's age who are starting in the workforce or in their first 5 years or so in the workforce, and they all get the same lecture from me, which is $20 a week now you won't even miss, and it will make a huge difference when you're at the retirement end of this process. So they all assure me they're doing that. I don't know whether they are or not, but at least I'm giving the lecture. And just, plan for these types of things before the event rather than afterwards. And these types of conversations are really important before you marry somebody, before you cohabit with them, before you enter into any kind of domestic arrangement with them. Have the conversation. And people tend to shy away with it because nobody likes to talk about money, right? And I get it, but it has to be done.
It has to be done. And nobody also wants to talk about their demise and their aging.
Yeah, right. And I'm caring for my mum at the moment, who is 86. So when she was working, superannuation wasn't even a thing. It's been her saving grace that my parents owned their property. But there's an awful lot of people, and again, the people that you work with, like women over 55 who don't own a property, who don't have the superannuation, and who are now kind of locked out of the workforce because the workforce is a little bit ageist, right?
Yes.
So we need to be making sure that doesn't happen for future generations.
100%. So there's the immediate need right now, and for women that are in that situation, who are in a not only that situation but in a housing market that isn't particularly friendly, and then we've got the making sure it doesn't happen for our young women.
Right. Which is why I love your program. Actually, it's that foot onto the property ladder at an affordable point. But it's also addressing the bigger issue, which is so important. Yeah.
And it's all around raising awareness. So, you sort of somebody comes on board, then they're understanding what the issues are.
It absolutely is raising awareness, and it's, again, as I tell younger women, just take a look at how we're doing right now, at how my generation is doing right now. It's not particularly good, and we're trying to do better for you.
Yeah, beautiful. So, Amanda, could you tell us a little bit about Yenom, what you do, how you help people, and how they can get in touch with you?
Sure. So Yenom is my baby, and I was probably in a similar position in that I was thinking I would retire. And then the more I was winding my work down and thinking about traveling the world and all that kind of thing. But it became apparent to me that this is my passion. I'm not happy unless I'm doing something like this. And at the end of the day, my only objective is that people have that level of financial security that says that they can do anything else in their life that they want to do. So we're addressing those first two levels of Maslow's hierarchy. It doesn't really matter what it is you want to do. Some people need millions of dollars, other people only need thousands of dollars, and so that's a very individual thing. But I've just seen the difference that it makes in life when you actually have those basics under control. At that point, you can choose so many other things. So at Yenom, again, as I identified, my objective was to address the people who don't have any resources at the moment, the working poor. The best way to get to those people, because they obviously also can't afford to pay for my programs, right, was to take it into the workplace. So when I looked at how financial stress manifests in the workplace, it was kind of shocking. $64 billion a year in lost productivity in Australia due to financial stress within the workplace. Financial stress is all-consuming. It just really narrows our bandwidth in terms of what we can cope with. And obviously, we don't leave that at home. We take that into the workplace as well. So we might be sitting at our desk, but we're worried about how we're going to pay a bill on the weekend. Or we might be sitting at our desk, but we're also thinking, do I need to get another job, or do I need to change jobs in order to get ahead in future? Bring in the advent of AI, and we've got a stat that says 69% of people in Australia at the moment don't actually know whether their job is still going to be their job in 18 months' time. That's a huge amount of workplace stress. So we've actually developed a workplace financial wellbeing program that meets people where they are, which is at work. It's a combination. It's a holistic program. So we do education. We also, once we educate people around their financial situation, we find that they're in a bigger hole than they think they are. So we provide independent financial counselling too, which is not advice or planning, it's counselling. And then beyond that, we build some capability into the corporation. So we do a train the trainer program so that the people and culture team can identify financial stress, can address it, and know how to deal with it. So that's the workplace type of thing. But then there's also a lot of people who are going to not be working for people that I work with. So we're about to launch an app. Now, the app I'm very, very proud of. No budget will work without a spending diary or a spending tracker. And in the old days, having to do everything manually meant that people would get all excited about it for a month or so and then realize they had to do it for too long and then just stop doing it. So I love technology when it works for us. So the app now pulls all of your banking information into the app and automatically records all of your transactions. So the only thing that you need to manually record is cash transactions, and there's not too many of those these days. What we do also, so we've got a holistic overview of your financial situation, all debt, all HEX, all super, all that kind of stuff. It allows you to set a goal, like these are your monthly expenses. Now let's get that 6-month savings plan in place, or let's reduce your debt. Let's get your superannuation to a certain amount, whatever it may be. And we have then, so we've qualified for some Australian innovation grants in terms of using AI to support the behavioural change around that. So if you've set a goal to save a 6-month savings fund and you've been to McDonald's 5 times this week, the app will either roast you or praise you, depending on how you like to be reminded. So if you want to be roasted, it'll be like, oh, McDonald's 5 times this week, your waistline doesn't need that, and neither does this goal. If you would rather be praised, it'd be like, oh, McDonald's 5 times this week, that's 2 times less than last week. Well done, but don't forget the goal. So it's very much around know thyself. It's know what is happening with your money and make it work for you. The beautiful thing about this too, completely independent. We don't sell anything. We don't recommend anything. Now, we are holding some data, but it's depersonalized data. So we don't need your age. We need your age range. We need a postcode, not your actual address. We need a salary range, not your actual salary. And the reason I'm doing that is so that we've got statistics around financial pressure for the working poor, and so that we can use that to advocate to government agencies, participate in research, etc., around what Australians actually need. So we'll never sell you anything. We'll never sell you data. You're not going to be marketed anything. It's all about, my peace, love and mung beans type of approach to helping people at the end of the day. And then we, of course, have the not-for-profit foundation right next door to Yenom. We've got the Yenom Foundation. And if anybody comes to me and needs some help but can't afford it, we've got scholarships and support available through the Yenom Foundation. So at the end of the day, I just want everybody to be financially well. I want everybody to be able to get beyond those first two levels of Maslow and get out and do what they want to do with life.
This is just so awesome and beautiful, and I don't think I really understood the depth of what you're doing. So I'm really grateful that we've had this time on the podcast, and I'm going to share this far and wide because it's so important. Thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And I know that, this, as you said, you could retire, but this is your passion project.
I love what I do. I love every day. I love everything that I'm kind of working. And it's a bit like your own work. I mean, it's your passion as well. It's building on your expertise. It's what you're doing. But you can also build a few little quirks into your own company, that you can't do with corporate. So I am obviously a dog person. This is Ignatius Jones. So into the app, we've built so when you set up a household, we call it a domestic, group. We don't mind what the format is or anything like that. So you can have 2 income earners or 3 income earners, whatever it is, children. But you can also you put your pets in there and you can determine whether they are spoiled pets like this one or general run-of-the-mill working dogs, etc., who don't get the level of grooming and attention and hair bobbles that this guy gets. So you can really personalise it to what you need it to be for you. And at the end of the day, it's all about the household. It's all about you. It's all about getting ahead. So, but there's a bit of fun in there as well.
Cool. I'm so glad to hear that. Well, Amanda, thank you so much. This has been such a great podcast. I've really enjoyed it, and I just know that when this goes out, so many others are going to enjoy it as well.
I really think it was fantastic to meet with you and know that we have so much in common in terms of our objectives. So I'm looking forward to see how your projects go. I'm looking forward to participating in them, and I also tell everybody about them. I spread the word far and wide. So thank you for talking with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dion.